Hey everybody, this is Michael Sadler of Saga, and this is Sonic Dorms.
So my name is Max, and this is Sonic Dorms. On today's show, I have a very special guest, long awaited for me in this particular case. His name is Michael Sadler, phenomenal vocalist of the band Saga and many other projects, including his latest endeavor in a band called Progject, which involves his tribute to all sorts of progressive rock acts throughout the 70s. A lot that are favorites of mine, including Yes and Genesis, early Genesis in particular. So with that being said, thank you for taking the time to do this with me today, Michael. It's really an absolute honor. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, trust me.
All right, thank you. So one of the biggest things for me as just a general fan of your work is your storyline, and to me it really is an absolute indication of perseverance. To me, the band Saga is the a musical embodiment of persevering in a music industry that, as many probably know, the music industry itself, as it once was and even today, whatever exists of it, has been very up and down and comes and goes in waves and cycles, and it's very unpredictable. So the fact that the band and artists such as yourself would continue to play the game in their own way and take it all in stride the way that you have and the other members of Saga have, and continue to roll out album after album in such a way throughout your 40+ year career is just astounding, and to me an absolute inspiration to not just myself but anybody out there in the world trying to make it in whatever it is that they're involved with, especially in the arts.
Oh, thank you. It hasn't been easy. It is one of the hardest businesses, anything in the entertainment business. When you're dealing with public taste, so there's that. There's a lot of luck involved, being the right place at the right time. It's not always a matter of the talent, but you've got to have the talent to go, to back it up. More importantly, almost as importantly, I should say, is you have to have a passion for it. You have to really believe and love what you're doing. Having said that, I mean, it's really a matter of sticking to your guns, what you really believe in, but being willing to be flexible, not to, ultimately completely change just to suit the market or the record company or the public or what's in the top 40 that week and that kind of thing. But more just keep your ear to the ground, be flexible to criticism. You don't have to take it, but you have to be flexible, and you have to examine the whole thing every once in a while. Our key, I think, and from day one has kind of been our credo, was not to be predictable and to put as many exclamation points in the music as possible. But we like to surprise the audience, but you can surprise without being too bizarre. I think that Saga has always been more song oriented than most sort of traditional prog bands, as it were. But I mean, to call Saga a prog band, not prog band, it's a bit of a misnomer, I think, because I mean, I wouldn't consider us I mean, as far as the purists go, you ask them, and we're not really a prog band per se. I think we're just a really good rock band, really solid rock band with heavy progressive influences. We fall in this kind of gray area, as I think we may have discussed before, but we're not quite proggy enough for the purist prog community, and not quite rock in your face for the hard rockers. So we've got this middle ground and a bit an enigma since day one, which I kind of like. I mean, you can't really pigeonhole it, but I think that also contributes to longevity, because the music, when you make music like that, you're not designing it for a certain time, a certain audience. You're just creating music that hopefully will be relatively timeless. You can't put a timestamp on it. And I think we've managed to do that, which is probably part of the reason for the longevity in itself, and a remarkable fan base. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's really just, stick to your guns, be true to yourself, follow your heart, do what pleases you ultimately, because that's why you're creating music, and hopefully a lot of people will enjoy what you're coming up with. But don't be so so inflexible that you're not willing to wouldn't say be influenced by or change, but just be aware that maybe there's another way of looking at things once in a while. And we've always, like I say, not tried not to be too predictable and gone off on a different path for an album or two. And the fans have been very loyal, and they're very forgiving as well. I mean, there's been a couple of albums where we released them, and the fans are kind of like the overall consensus is, yeah. I mean, not my favorite, but I'll wait for the next one. You know, you're forgiven for trying that. You know, but that's for me. That's really the key. Just trying to be as honest to yourself as possible, and just be willing to listen to others to a point. To a point.
And that honesty is evident when there was a certain moment early on for you where you had a change at heart as far as where your life was going to go. I've heard stories that you've told about that moment where you looked at yourself in the mirror and you said, I don't want to be doing this one particular thing for the rest of my life. I'd rather be making music.
I didn't recognize the person that I saw in the mirror. I had been in a band with Jim Crichton, one of the founding members, along with myself, the primary songwriters at the beginning. And we'd been in a cover band prior to that together. And we were doing, top 40 stuff, as well as doing, like, we'll throw in a King Crimson and Gentle Giant song, which made bar audiences kind of go, what, but there was hints of us, doing that kind of thing early on. That band broke up, and he went on to join a band called Flood from Toronto. Had a great deal of success in kind of in the early 70s. And I got out of the business. I didn't like something about the way it broke up, and whether it be management or money issues. I can't even really remember at this point, but it left a bad taste in my mouth. And I thought, music business is, this, as much as I like to perform and sing, it rubbed me the wrong way. And I joined the sort of the normal workforce, and did a number of things. And I ended up being a salesman for a graphic arts company, and had the company car and the briefcase and the whole bit, three-piece suit. And that was all well and good. And then Jim called me one day, and the band Flood had broken up, and he was writing some material. And he called me up and said, would you be interested in coming by, just come over for dinner and just put some vocals on these, 3 or 4 songs I've written. I said, sure, I'd love to. Went over and had dinner one night. And after supper, we just threw on some vocals just for fun. And it was really cool. I really enjoyed it, obviously. And something obviously sparked in me. I went to work the next day. I was still thinking about what had happened the night before. And then I kind of looked in the mirror, and I had my suit still on. I just started looking at myself going, wait a minute, who are you? What is this? You shouldn't be doing, you're supposed to be doing that, and consequently, quit my job the next day and just called up Jim and said, hey, you want to take this seriously and just get this really going? He said, of course. I think he knew by having me come over, if we were to talk about this, I think he probably knew that if I came over and just had a taste of it again, that I'd be hooked. And sure enough, and then the rest is history. That was it. We just started pounding out songs and put the band together, and Saga was born.
I take it you're a very self-motivated individual. Is that something that you've always had inside of you, that sense of just believing in yourself?
I think when it came to the point in my life when I realized that this is the only thing I wanted to do, or something relating to music. And when it came to that, as I say, once you do, if you can find that spark and that passion of something, it doesn't have to be music, but if it is, or anything in the arts, that's when you commit to it, and you just go, I'm going to make this work. As I'm going to do everything I can. Now, if all the pieces fall into place, great. Timing, luck, an audience that wants that kind of song at that time. I mean, that's the other thing about the music business, or music in general. You can write a song today that you put it out there and just kind of, people aren't in the mood for that kind of song right now. Now, you release that 5-10 years ago, maybe a different story. Be like, yes, that's exactly what we want to hear right now. It's just the general mood that people are in. You have no way of predicting that, but you just keep, as long as you have a really strong imagination and creative drive inside you, anything's possible. So, yes, I've been very self-motivating since I realized that this is what I want to do.
It's fantastic. And again, it's really inspiring to, I think, a lot of people out there, especially in this day and age, with how things are in
Uh,
music and entertainment industry. I think in
yeah.
particular that
I feel actually bad for it, but I mean it's a lot tougher now. Although it seems okay, it would seem that it's more accessible and easier in a sense because of all the social medias and all the platforms that you're able to use to introduce new music to people. Unfortunately, because of that, there's a flood of music and projects and things that you can be exposed to. And it's so immediate and so quick. And the landscape is not the same as it used to be. It really isn't. I mean, you go on tour, bands like ourselves and bands from that era, if they're still performing, still a touring act, you used to go on tour to promote an album. Now you'll maybe come up with some new music to give an excuse to go on the road because you're not selling any physical copies anymore. That is evident. That is gone in terms of a real revenue source. So it's really about playing live and merch and that kind of thing. That's where a musician, a modern musician, modern touring musician can make money. Because like I say, it used to be, let's get on the road and promote this record. We'll sell gazillions of copies, and that's where your income's coming in, as long as you struck the right deal with the record company, of course. But it's completely reversed in the meantime. So it's tough. It's in a sense, it's a lot tougher. I don't know that it'd be possible these days to start a brand new, I don't want to say traditional rock band, but five or six guys playing their instruments and being an actual band and getting out there. I think the odds are against them these days far more so than back when, like in the 70s or even early 80s. But yeah, for the ones that make it, I am encouraged. I see all the time new like rock bands, not projects, not studio projects where you can cut and paste and that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's an art form in itself, and I give kudos to people who can do that really well and create a song like that. I keep a very open mind and credit where credit's due. But the idea of a rock band just going, okay, we're going to conquer the world. Let's go for it. It's refreshing to see that there are bands out there doing that, and there are young guys getting into it. And I think everyone's kind of fed up with the cookie cutter kind of music to a point. So when something cool comes out, that's more along the lines of a traditional rock band, it's like new and fresh. So, and that's cool.
absolutely. And going back for a second to your roots, I always like to ask first time guests on Sonic Dorms about the origin story, if you will, when it came to the roots of why they fell in love with music in the first place. So for you, do you remember that point of discovery for you, that entryway into your love of music?
Uh, I think it was always, I don't remember a certain point in time. I think it was always there. I mean, I was exposed to music, especially vocally, when I was in the church choir when I was quite young, from the age of, I think, 8 or 9 years old for 7 or 8 years. So the music was already there. I wasn't in the church choir by choice. I just ended up there. Went through till I had an adult voice, and I was always aware of music and always really liked it. I mean, my first album was the Monkees, of all things, their debut album. But I always liked it. I don't think there was a moment in time when I realized that, oh, I really like music and maybe I should think about pursuing it. I think it was inherent. I think it's part of the genes, perhaps. I don't have a particularly musical family I mean, professionally speaking, anyway. So I don't come from that kind of background where there's music playing in the house all the time and that kind of story. It was just there. I can't remember like that light bulb moment. It was like, oh, music. I've discovered music. I really like it. I want to do something with it. It's like I say, I've always grown up surrounded by it in a sense with the choir, and then straight out of choir. I left the church choir and quit school. Don't do this, kids. Quit school and left home to move in with a blues band when I was 17 years old, and they were all old guys in their 20s. And, I mean, I just went straight into it, straight out of the choir, basically into performing.
Did you have any vocalists in particular that for you were the inspirations for you as a singer yourself?
In the early days, no one in particular, I don't think, that I can remember. as time progressed, Freddie Mercury suddenly made his presence known, and I was like, what? I mean, Freddie was the whole package, as in terms of the voice, the performance, his on-stage presence, and just everything about the man. And Peter Gabriel, of the two ends of the spectrum. Peter definitely for his theatrics and the way he would present songs, and different animal than Freddie, but both, they knew how to, I won't say entertain an audience, but that means presenting your music to an audience, and putting it across in a live setting. Because quite often, you know, as you probably know, I'm well aware of, and people are well aware that songs take on a whole different feel live. They become much more organic. As long as it's not all based on playback, of course, but you got the guys up there playing, and the song just starts to breathe a bit more. It's a different animal, and you sing it slightly differently. And the melody's still there, but you just have a different, you got people in front of you and they're all smiling at you and their arms are in the air. You can't help but be inspired to emote more. But when I started to really focus on singers, those two for sure. Steve Perry, I always thought was an amazing singer. Brad Delp, Boston, and you know, singers. John Wetton in the prog world, a tremendous vocalist. Greg Lake as well. I just appreciate good, you know, well sung performances. Good singers. But I mean, there's value in hearing Mick Jagger sing. I mean, he doesn't proclaim himself to be, you know, operatic or a technician when it comes to singing, but he's got his style, and it works. It works for the Rolling Stones. It works for him. You know, he's not a singer, and he doesn't pretend to be. He's Mick Jagger. You know, and you get Lou Reed, same thing. You know, but I always will gravitate towards the singers, as it were. So there's a bunch of them out there.
When you were putting together the construct of the Saga sound, if you will, what was that? What was the alchemy like when you guys were saying, let's mix a little bit of this, let's mix a little of that? Because one thing that's immediately evident from the 78 debut by Saga is that there is a world here that you guys had created, whether it's with the sonics, the songcraft, the chapters that begin on that first album. There's a certain, almost like a universe that the band has created within the album. It almost feels like cinematic in a way.
That was, I don't want to say accidental, but it was kind of a byproduct of just us. I mean, you also have different elements coming together at the very beginning. Jim and I were hard into the prog world, especially Gentle Giant, but really hard into the prog world. Steve Negus, the original drummer, came from an R&B background. Ian Crichton, Jim's brother, guitar-wise, was Led Zeppelin and bands like that. So he's coming from the hard rock world, guitar-wise. You got two proggers, and you've got an R&B guy, and then you've got Peter Rochon, the original player, and now Jim Gilmore. Jim Gilmore was classically trained. He went to university to study music. So you put all that together, and that's where you get that I guess the enigma I was talking about. That it's you can't really put a finger on it. We used to call it, just for fun, we'd call it medieval funk, because it had these sort of Celtic feels and that with this really funky side, and then with Ian with the really driving hard rock guitar, and then you put all those together in the epic keyboards. It's like, wow, what is this? But we never questioned it. It just seemed to come out. That's what we ended up creating. And I think another rule of thumb was anything goes. Nothing was off limits. You know, I mean, there were parameters, but we didn't make them. They kind of made themselves. We knew when something wasn't appropriate, it just didn't feel good. We were very fussy about what we worked on, and democratic about it too, because you've got 5 people, and all 5 had to agree on the songs that we were going to eventually put on whichever record we were working on at the time. Because ultimately, I mean, as a singer, not just as a singer, any of the players in the band, if you're not crazy about the song that everyone else is, you'll do it, you know, and it's like, it's okay, but you're not feeling the same passion about it as the other 4. You're not going to perform that, whether it be on guitar, vocal, drums, keyboards, bass, the same way you would if you were really, really committed to that song the way the other 4 are. So it's kind of counterproductive in a sense. You're not going to get the best performance out of that individual. So it's best to all be on the same, and also, I mean, you're going to come up with a better feeling song if everyone's really working it and really loving it and refining their part in amongst the rehearsal. It's better off, everyone's better off at the end of the day. So, and the other thing we would always say was, if anything, if we were in the middle of working on something, if someone said, "Oh, that reminds me of," it was like, "What?" And even if no one had heard of it before, what they're talking about is, say, "That reminds you of something?" And then we can't use that. If anything, the remotest bit reminded anybody in the band as we were writing something of something else, you go, "No, no, no, we can't do that," because whether it's recognizable or not, it could be a subliminal thing that someone's going to hear and one day go, "Oh, they must have been listening to so-and-so because that reminds me of," I didn't want anybody doing that. I didn't want there to be any, we didn't want there to be any reference to someone else's music or influence, as it were. We wanted this to be us and new and fresh and as original as possible.
And speaking of that songwriting process, it always interests me to hear what somebody goes through when they begin writing a song. And
Hell, it's called hell.
Everybody has a different story. Some people really have to take the time to carve it out, and then some people, it kind of just pops in one day, right? But how is that for you, that process? What do you go through, if you don't mind sharing?
It's kind of different each time, but in a sense, the same in terms, for me, it's been very rare that I have just, a song has popped into my head and I can hear it from beginning to end. I sit down and write it in like 5 minutes, and that's it. I've done that with lyrics in the past. Just, oh, I got an idea for a lyric and write it down. But 9 times out of 10, 90% of the material that Saga has, or I've written with Saga, or for myself for that matter, the music has always come first. And a lot of songwriters, country writers, for example, they get a guitar and the lyric happening, and then they work around. They've got the story already in their head. They've got the lyrics pretty much worked out, and then you put the song, or you build the song around that. I do it the other way around, and I let the music tell me what the song is supposed to be about, as it were. Unless I have, I'll be working on something and maybe a key phrase, which may end up being the chorus or something, but something's, I keep singing the same thing in a certain part, and it becomes catchy to me. If nothing else, to remind me of the rhyming scheme or the timing of the vocal that's going to be there eventually, or melody that's going to be there eventually. But most of the time it's the music first, and generally it starts with a groove. If I'm at home sitting with my gear and staring at the screen, I'll put some basic groove in. I've maybe got an idea for a groove in my head, and I'll just say, I want this kind of groove, this kind of song that works off this kind of groove. I'll start with the groove first and a bass line, and then take it from there, whether it be a piano or a guitar line or something. But just put it down in this basic form, always starting with the rhythm, just for me. Unless it's a piano-based song like a ballad, and then you don't. The groove is not important. That is definitely an afterthought, if there is one at all.
When words and lyrics do pop up in your mind, do they come with a melodic refrain, or is it just the words?
Interesting question. Most of the time, it's just the words, like a clever phrase, or I'll hear a line, not that I'm going to steal from someone, but a clever way of saying something, or that, and it'll spark something else. But most of the time, once in a while, in fact, I'm working on a song right now that I've actually been working on for on and off for about 10 years. And it's one of those where I'm such a perfectionist, and I think it's a really important and really cool song, but it's not until it's ready, and I will just go back to it every once in a while on that. But the one that I'm working on right now, that happened to me where the chorus was happening and I heard words sitting on the melody. Now, whether they stay or not, I'm not sure, but that is the place mark. That's the placeholder for me right now. It may well be that is the name of the song, or the subject of the song, or one of the key memorable moments, or whatever, or key phrases. But yeah, generally it's just the music comes. I start hearing a melody on top of it, but usually it's almost complete in terms of final, just short of being the final arrangement of that, but a verse, bridge, and chorus. I'll wait till that's kind of together. Then I'll just sit back and just let it play over and over. Go for a drive with a demo of that, the song in that state. Just drive around and just start singing along with it in the car, or just getting ideas that way.
Are there
once in a while I'll hear the lyric on it. But.
Yeah. Are there particular instances within the last decade or so where you're writing songs and you know that it's something that you're going to devote more towards a solo project and or more so than a Saga project, or does it just really you don't figure that out till the end of the day?
I don't really figure that out until the end of the day. And usually what happens is there's almost like, I don't want to say a designated writing period, but there kind of is in the sense that in terms of, especially now after, just over 4 decades of doing this in the same bunch of guys, it's a time factor, and you slice out portions of your life in a year or whatever, and in terms of the career and what the band is doing. And if you sit down and go, okay, it's time to do a new album, you kind of, once that's kind of announced to yourselves and to everybody else that it's time to do the new one, then the writing begins. The writing always begins individually. You start coming up with ideas at home or whatever you've got. We'll come with, say I've got 9 songs, as it were. Usually it's just like bits and pieces, passages, like a really strong, what I think is really strong chorus or this kind of thing. And we'll come in with all these bits and pieces and kind of construct a song, as it were. Like, this is a really cool chorus. I need a verse that goes along. Oh, that verse that you came up with, Ian, and what key is that? I think that would go into this part really nicely. So that's when the kind of jigsaw puzzle aspect of the writing comes together. And it's kind of a cool way to do it, because then you've got distinct other personalities adding that section, instead of everybody working on that guy's whole song, as it were. But yeah, but in terms of me, when we get into that phase, then I'm locked into whatever I'm writing is for Saga, because I'm in Saga album mode, and I'm thinking that way. If during that process something I think is really cool, but not necessarily album material for this go round, I may shelve that and think I might use that for myself. And I did it a couple of times on my first solo album. But and they were just bits that I had not left over from Saga, but most of it was written fresh. But there were a couple of moments that I pulled over. But that's usually the process. If we start working on a Saga record, that's all I'm working on. But I mean, the one I'm working on right now for myself, it's really starting to come together, and I think it's really strong. And now I'm kind of going, well, I should be doing a backup to, like a follow-up to Clear. I want to do Clear Part 2. So this is a real contender for that. But on the other hand, at this point, it's like 45 years. If we're going to do another album, we probably will, but it's got to be like our swan song at this point. It's got to be like it's got to be like a Worlds Apart. So it's got to be just right. This would suit that kind of record. So now, now I'm sitting here going, save it for myself. These are a song. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
A little conflicted about it.
Well conflicted. Every time I go to work on
it. You mentioned lyrics, and one thing that's always fascinated me about your words are how motivational a lot of them are. Most of the time, I don't think I've ever really read a negative Saga lyric. I mean, most of your lyrical content has been about self-motivation. It's about uplifting yourself. I mean, songs like You're Not Alone, Climbing the Ladder, Lifeline. I mean, I could go on and on. There's a lot of positivity there, which for me personally has helped me get through this thing called life. So thank you for that. Really,
you're welcome. Semi-unintentional. I think what that is born from is I've always been a huge fan of human behavior. I love, like airports, for example. I will sit there waiting for a flight and just watch people and imagine, what's that couple doing? Are they saying goodbye for good? Did they just meet and they're just, what's that family going on with that family? And there's a service guy and where he's going, and I just imagine what these people do, and just watching what people do, the good and the bad, and pointing out, not pointing out, but bringing to attention like little flaws and the silly things we do or smart things we do or whatever. But and it's never been about pointing fingers and look how stupid that person's being or this and that or how bad they are and that's not a nice way to be. It's noticing things about humans in general, ourselves included, myself included, when I'm writing it. So I'm just the human animal is fascinating to me. So what I try to do probably most of the time is just find the best in that situation and go, why do that when you could do this and a better outcome? Or, have you ever thought about doing this and that? So I think the positivity comes from that. It comes from finding little flaws in the human animal that we are, self-included, and just finding ways to go and questioning things like, why do we behave that way? Is that really necessary? The other people are going to get hurt if we do that kind of thing. So, but again, it's not about preaching or pointing fingers. It's just bringing that to people's attention, I guess. Mine too. I mean, I've learned a lot about myself by doing that way. I'll look at something and I'll go, why do I do that too? Why do I do that?
Is that something that Jim Crichton also had a hand in? Also,
I think so. We just both naturally wrote that way. And
yeah.
Same thing, it's just we were on the same kind of wavelength when it came to writing lyrics. We never in the beginning really didn't. I made a joke, and it comes up in interviews once in a while. But you said that you never wrote a love song. You said you'd never use the word love. Well, it's inevitable. You're going to grow up one day and talk about it. But yeah, in the beginning, it wasn't about boy-girl relationship, this thing. And even when later on, when I started diving into that area, it wasn't your run-of-the-mill boy meets girl, boy loses girl. If there's a relationship, there's something strange about it, or they're torn, or this outside influences, that Romeo and Juliet kind of thing. It's that kind of thing, as opposed to just she broke my heart, so I got in the truck and I drove down and got a 24-pack, and then saw her the next day and brought her a dog. We lived happily ever after. And there's nothing wrong with those songs. I think they're great, but that's not the way that I write music.
Right. So now, really quickly, going back to that, there's a transitional period to my ears for you in your career vocally, and to me, it happens between Silent Night and Worlds Apart. And I think you know where I'm getting at here, but it involves a certain producer of high stature who we've lost in the recent years, but incredible. One of my favorites, Rupert Hine. When he came on board to work with you on Worlds Apart in 1981, there's a distinct shift, not only sonically, but in your vocal approach, delivery, in your voice. It's still you, but it sounds like you kind of went up a tier.
It's more of a human me. I think probably part of the reason in the early days, coming almost straight out of a church choir, all the discipline was there, and that's the way I was used to singing things exactly right, and the breathing was exactly, and enunciation and this and that. When you're singing hymns, and part of a choir, you have to sing that way. So that's your training growing up. When I transitioned to singing rock music, that no one ever mentioned making the adjustment, so I would just like singing blues with these three older guys, and I'm singing like Chicago blues, but I'm singing it like a choir boy, and it's not the way you're supposed to sing the blues. But nobody ever said anything. So if you listen to the first three albums, especially the first one, there is that disciplined singing. The notes are there, but it's very measured. When we came to do Worlds Apart, we worked on the songs, just pounded them. We lived over in England in Maidenhead, and all lived in the same house, and just every day we just pounded these songs. Once we knew which songs were going to be on the record. But the very first meeting with Rupert, we sat down in the control room at the studio, the Farm Road Studios, and we're sitting on the couch there, and Rupert said, "Okay, well, really excited to, I've got some ideas and this and that." And Steve and I, his partner, Stephen Taylor, we've talked about it. We've got some, let's just talk about, let's start with the drums, blah, blah, blah. This is what we love about them. This is what we'd like to try and do. Like, oh, yeah. And then he did that with the guitar, and then with the bass, and then the keyboards. And then finally he goes, "All right, Michael, let's talk about the vocals." And we're like, uh-oh, saved the worst till last. He said, and I'll never forget this. He just looked at me and said, "Okay, we know you can sing. So that's not the question here. But what I want you to do now is forget everything you've learned about singing." And I was like, hang on. So you want me to just wipe the slate clean? And what he meant was, you've got the discipline, you've got the chops. We know you have a voice. We know you can sing. You can sing in key. Great. Now, forget all that and just sing. Just hear the words in your head, feel them coming. Just sing. If you make a mistake, who cares? We're here to record. And if you make a mistake, maybe you meant to make a mistake because that line is wrong. Maybe try it a different way because you keep making the same mistake, that kind of thing. But just play with the song. You know how the melody goes. You know what the lyrics are. Now sing those lyrics to us. You know, sell me that song, but do it, just feel it. And as soon as you explain it that way, I realized what he was talking about. And that's when the change really did happen. and I started singing more. I mean, there's still discipline involved, but less measured, as I said. It's less thinking about where the next note is going to land. You know, how you get there is half the fun, and it doesn't have to be like climbing a ladder, going to taking each step to that next note. You get there whichever way you can, as long as it doesn't sound, you know, out of tune or that. But he just freed me up to just not be concerned about it being perfect. You know,
Is that something that you still bring to your performances today?
I've never forgotten it. I've never forgotten it, especially live. There'll be one song, for example, when you do a tour, you're playing this essentially the same set each night. Each night I'll do a particular song slightly differently. I mean, the melody is the same, but it's going to sway a little bit differently each night because there's different factors. It's a different kind of audience. They're all really happy to see, but it's a different room. It's a different stage. It's a different smiling faces. Whatever, something different happened to you that day. I'm going to sing that song a little bit different each night, and it's just the inflections and the way I'm feeling. So that discipline has stayed with me, but I don't think about it. It's something that I think Rupert instilled in me, and that's what I do now. And I just feel the song now. Sometimes I'll hold a note much longer than than the night before. Sometimes I'll shorten it because I'll let someone else sing it or whatever. It's freedom to do that more than anything else. It unlocked a lot of possibilities for me as a vocalist. So.
I could also tell just through the performance footage of that era and on that as a performer, you also seem to have loosened up in this way where I see the Freddie Mercury influence suddenly take shape in a way that you started to make your own. But it felt like you began to engage with the audience 100 times more than you had prior to that. Again, was that just you? Was that a comfort thing for you?
There's a funny story about that. And I will attribute the change that I think you're noticing around the time that this happened is that we were enjoying a moderate amount of success and things were happening, and I was enjoying being on stage. But still a bit, I wouldn't say stiff, but stiffer than I am now, or started to become. And I will never forget, we had two managers at the time, and one of the managers, I won't name names, he'll remember. It was a positive thing at the end of the day, but I remember he took me aside and he said, you know, we were talking, meaning the management, so we were talking about it, and we're thinking maybe getting someone, another guy, in the band, and like, to do more of the sort of like the entertaining thing, like the more of a front thing, because you're doing a lot of keyboards and you're having to go back and this and that, and I'm like, wait a minute. And I think he was saying something, but it was really important, the keyboard parts I'm playing and that kind of thing. So it was like reinforcing the fact that you're still incredibly valuable, but maybe more valuable if we had another singer doing the entertainment. And I was like, wait a minute. So he had at that point like kind of thrown down the glove, as it were. And I was like, oh yeah. So I took that sort of "I'll show you" reply in my head. I thought, well, just give me, I said, well, hold off on that. First of all, I was a little bit insulted. I mean, it's like, wait a minute, you want someone else to be the singer. And so I think that motivated me to just go, really? You think so? Okay. So at that point, it was like, all right, Jim Crichton, bass player. I said, tell you what, let's find 3 or 4 songs that are fairly easy on keyboards and at the same time, fairly easy bass parts to play that I can sing as well at the same time, so that I wasn't stuck behind the keyboards doing a lead vocal, but the keyboards had to be there. I would play the bass part, which left me out front, and hence more entertainment, more of a front thing going on for me and the audience and the contacts, and that's how that that transition began. And then again, it's just it's being comfortable in your own skin, I think, and just trying a few things here and there, and then you just naturally fall into it. Where I mean, the audience really helps. You get motivated, you walk out there, and it's really hard not to get inspired to just. What it boils down to, I think that what I'm trying to translate as I'm singing is the interaction with the audience, which I think is paramount for any concert. That you not literally, but make the audience feel like they're on stage with you and you're out there with them, and you're spending the evening together. It's not like we're the band, you're getting entertained, you're the audience, and that's it. That is the distinction, but you can blur the lines when you're on stage and make them feel part of it, as opposed to we're entertaining you. No, we're all here together to make this evening happen. And the back and forth with the audience is critical. And I find it really natural in the meantime. I'll say something different every night. There are key things that I'll say. There are little triggers for songs or that kind of thing, or to get a reaction. That goes without saying. But there's just, do you get nervous before going on for a show after all these years? Yes, of course I do. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what they're going to be like. And it's not really nervous. I think it's just that anxious anticipation of, I can't wait to get out there and see how this goes. So, so long story short, I was pushed into it. And my pride wouldn't let me, wouldn't stand for it. So I thought, you know what, I'll show you. I'm glad he did. I'm glad he did.
That's the beauty of this, once again, is in the what makes this again so inspirational is that you fought back and you decided to take the challenge, and you actually took yourself to a whole nother plateau as a performer.
I think I thought, this isn't your band. I mean, thanks for the advice, but if you see a problem, well, let's fix it internally. I don't, thanks for pointing that out, but I'll take it from here.
That's beautiful. The Rupert Hine era to me is incredible. It obviously took the band to another level, but to me, where it gets really interesting in your catalog are the two albums that follow that. And one of them in particular, you've mentioned many times, captures what you consider to be, if I'm not mistaken, your favorite vocal on a Saga album, right? Or on an album in general, which is on 1985's Behavior.
On a whole. I mean, I'm not 100% happy with anything I've ever done. And there's, from a percentage point of view, that record I'm more happy with overall than any other record in terms of my vocal performance. I've mentioned it before that I think it's a cross between the songs, the melodies that I was singing, the lyrics, and the state of mind I was in at the time. And when I listen to it back now, I feel that feeling that I had, and it's a really good feeling. Oh, there's nothing specific. When you listen to a record, it just takes you back to a time, not specifically, but how you felt at that time in your life when you were hearing that song for the first time, or that music at that time. Behavior does that to me. And that tells me that I was in a really, really good place, because it makes me feel that way every time I hear the songs. And I'm very fussy about my vocal. And overall, of all the records, that is my favorite overall performance.
The sonics on that record by producer Peter Walsh, who had worked on You Gold Dream for Simple Minds prior to that, are astonishing to this day. It sounds 1985 without sounding 1985. At least
I agree. I was about to say it's got a bit of a timestamp on it, but in a good way. Like you say, it sounds like the time it's supposed to be, but it doesn't sound typical of the sound at that time, as it were. I mean, it sounds like an album that we made in 1985, but it doesn't reflect necessarily everything that was going on in 1985. But that was us then, and I really like I say, I think everybody was in a really good space at that time because things were going well. We were recording it in Munich, and of all the cities in Germany. I've mentioned it before, but if you're going to call any town or city in Germany your home away from home, it would be Munich. It's steeped in history for the band. So there was that, the familiarity of where we were, the songs, the producer, the studio itself. It was, everything fell into place with that when the stars aligned, and you know.
Musically and lyrically, it's still Saga in every way, but there was another bit of a shift there. Was that, what was the MO for the band at the time? As you said, at points you could take a little bit of outside influence. Was that the case with Behavior? Were you guys, what was the MO on that record, if you don't mind me asking?
I wish I could be specific in questions like that and go, well, you know what, there was a couple of songs I was listening to at the time that kind of made me go, there may have been, but like, to go back to my the original comments about how we approach albums and songwriting, if it's there, it's subliminal, and it's in the subconscious. But what came out, and it was a product of how we're feeling. I mean, there's a direct contrast in some of the songs. I mean, Promises is a complete contrast to, for example, Goodbye Once Upon a Time. Goodbye Once Upon a Time, I wrote the intro for that at a grand piano overlooking the Bahamian Sea. You know, we were in Nassau, living in the Bahamas for a while, and we were writing. And I remember sitting at the piano and just literally looking over the ocean, and came up with that the piano intro for that song. And that song in general, if you compare that to Promises, they're like, excuse me, the expression, but worlds apart from each other, but somehow live comfortably on the same album. So it was just, all the songs felt right to be included. When you do a new album, you could have 12, 15 songs, maybe as much as 20. You're going to whittle it down to, probably with our music, the most, maybe 10. Those songs that we chose wanted to live together on that record, and that's just, like I say, you know, sometimes songs will let you know what they want to do, or if they even want to be songs. I have choruses that have been the catalyst for many songs, never became one of them themselves. Because you take this chorus and start trying to build a song around it, suddenly you've got a song, but that chorus doesn't fit anymore. But it was the catalyst for the song, and it just sits on the shelf, and it does it 2 or 3 times. I think only one time that a chorus finally became a song, and I can't remember which one it was, but I remember going, "Oh, finally, it's got music of its own to go around it." You know. So.
To me, I mean, I can say this for a lot of the albums in the Saga catalog, but that record in particular, Behavior, should have been a smash hit. I mean, commercially speaking, I think that record has, and the fact that you guys wrote all the songs. I mean, there are no outside songwriters on Behavior, as far as I'm aware of. And I'm crazy. I look at the songwriting credits, so I look at all the liner notes, and I like
that goes back to the romantic days when people would buy vinyl and sit and put their headphones on and read the liner notes, you know, and listen at the same time. It doesn't happen anymore, unfortunately.
I'm a misplaced fanatic, in case you didn't know. So I'm out of my time here.
Yeah, that's fine. There's lots of you out there. I know you're out there. So
fantastic. So moving forward to you guys evolving as a trio, it was just you, Ian, and Jim creating Wildest Dreams with Keith Olsen. How did you get in touch with Keith? Was that something that happened immediately, or was that something that
that's something that, well, Jim was living in LA at the time, and I believe he came across Keith Olsen, if I'm not mistaken. It's either before or after he got his studio in LA, which is right next to Keith Olsen's. But yeah, the connection happened. Keith sounded interested. I at first kind of went, that's going to be an interesting choice in a different direction for us, I think. Judging by only by his discography and his track record. I mean, Whitesnake and Ozzy Osbourne and bands like that, and a lot of the hair bands from the 80s, those kinds of acts. And I thought, well, it could be interesting. I mean, I've got no point. This could be interesting to add his take on our music and see what we end up with. And Wildest Dreams, again, another record that I'm like, that's one of those with. It's kind of a split thing with the fans. A lot, no one hates it, but with the hardcore fans, they're kind of like, Wildest Dreams, it's different. It's only the 3 of them. It's not quite the same. And others go, no, it's not. But it's still a very, very strong Saga record. Saga at that time, what Saga was at that time, and it is a very strong record. It's you know, diving a bit more into the relationship thing and the love thing, but. I think the songs are really strong. There's a couple of killer tracks on that album that again, it should have probably got a lot more airplay. But at
that point in your career, you guys, I mean, at the end of the day, if you could have just given up at that point. But you guys again found your fan base, which was mostly in it was in Germany, correct? Was
mostly.
And you decided to just focus on that and continue and carry on no matter what, regardless of whatever happened. You guys carried on.
If you've got an audience, then it could be in Tasmania, it could be Alaska, it could be anywhere. As long as you've got a pocket of fans somewhere to write for, and they appreciate what you're doing, and that if there's an audience for it, there's no reason to stop. Just because we rode the popularity ride up and down through 4.5 decades, and we're fortunate enough, maybe it's the longevity thing, I'm not sure, the number of albums that we put out, but there seems to be I sense a kind of, I hesitate to use the word renaissance, but there is something going on with the band right now, and there's this new life, and I can feel it in the audiences that we played to recently. I will attribute, let's give it 45% to the fact that, you know, the whole COVID starvation of live music, and they're just excited to be back out again. But I look at the people out there and they're singing every word, so I can't say it's mostly the COVID thing, and they're just, you know, getting out again. But there definitely seems to be a groundswell around the band again, and we are playing very, if I do say so myself, we're playing very, very well right now. It's tight, it's fun, and that's the other comment that people have said, that we're smiling, and we're just, I'm walking around, you know, just saying whatever I feel like. I mean, I've done shows where recently someone came up to me and said, everyone seems to be having such a good time up there. Everyone's just smiling and laughing. Like, what is it that you're saying to the other guys in the band when you make them laugh? I said, you know what? 80% of the time, it has nothing to do with the set. It has nothing to do with music. It could be something that happened at lunchtime, something that happened the day before in the hotel, whatever. But I'll just whisper something really stupid in someone's ear, and and it's a little game trying to distract them so they'll make a mistake. But no, we're having fun, and we're playing really well with each other right now, and I can feel it in the audiences. So there's a definite groundswell going on again for the band, which is great. At this point in our careers, to have this happening is really nice feeling.
What I think too is on your side is the fact that you guys never stopped. You guys have been consistent throughout your career, made quality albums. There's been a couple detours here and there, experiments, but throughout the career, it's been consistent. And I think beginning from full circle forward for the band, nothing but what I would call roots Saga, and that you've been making these great records that are kind of a nod to that core Saga sound that was created on the first 3 records.
I think so too, yeah.
But still moving it forward in a new direction. So it's still fresh.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be. It is always, that was one of the rules. It has to feel fresh. It has to feel, it doesn't feel like we're revisiting something we did before, you know, like, oh, that sounds like a brand new, oh, that could be a new Wind 'Em Up. No. As soon as you said that out of your mouth, we're not, as much as we love that record, that was that record. This is now, and things have got to be, like you said, they've got to be moving forward, you know, not necessarily in a specific creative way, but the energy has to be moving forward, and not going back and thinking, oh, well, let's remember what it was like to make this record. No, you don't do that. You can reminisce, but you're working on something new right now, and it's not time to do that. You're working on some new energy and some new music and some new thoughts, and it's.
For those that are unaware, Saga did release a record a couple of years ago called Symmetry. I found it incredibly fascinating, and you guys pretty much put a new coat of paint and deconstructed some classic Saga tunes and brought them out to people in a very, very new way, very organic sounding. And I still put that on to this day. I think that's a very, very interesting album, and your take on deconstructing those classic songs in such a way.
That album, I'll tell you, man, it was the most. It's funny because they were a collection of songs that we already knew, and that we had, I think 90% of them we had played live, and quite a number of times. But it was one of the most challenging and yet rewarding records we've ever made. Challenging simply because, see, when we first announced what kind of record it was going to be, the knee-jerk reaction was, oh, it's an unplugged record. They're just going to play those songs with an acoustic guitar instead of an electric guitar, and a piano instead of essentially the same songs, just stripped down. We didn't, it's us. There's no way we're going to do that. We're not just going to say, nah. So we had talked for a while about doing at some point um, an acoustic version as opposed to an unplugged album. Because you see, there's nothing wrong with doing an unplugged album, just basically unplugged, except for the fact that if you come off looking lazy or like it's you're filling time in between studio releases, like, oh, let's do this to keep the fan base alive or keep the name out there while we work on something else. We didn't want to do that, and that was the misconception at first, till people heard what we were up to. But what we had to do was look at these songs individually, what parts we did at first. How can we completely deconstruct this song, instrumentation wise and arrangements and that kind of thing, without losing the integrity of the song? For myself, for example, Wind Him Up, I had to, because of the key of the song, I had to kind of reimagine the verse melody, simply because you can't sing it with the same bravado without the instrumentation behind it. This is a different feel, and lyrically it's later on. So I changed the lyrics slightly to like, he's still standing at his table, still the guy's still gambling. Since you heard him in the 80s, he's still at the table, you know. But the beauty of it was the timing was spot on. If there was any silver lining to the COVID cloud, it's the fact that we were suddenly, you know, we're all quarantined. There's no touring. There's nothing like that. In a lot of cases, you're not even leaving your house. And we thought, you know what, this is the perfect time to work on a record like that, because as opposed to a new studio album where you need all 5 guys in the studio and you got to play the songs, record them, and it's that kind of thing, because these are new songs. And you're probably arranging them or working on a little bit as you go anyway. These were songs that we all knew. We knew our parts, what used to be our parts. So it really was a matter of each member of the band addressing their part and reimagining it and coming up with something different. So what better time to do it than you're stuck in your house? You don't need the other guys around because you know how the song's going to go. We're sharing bed tracks, and hear a little bit of Ian's acoustic on one of the songs or something. If I needed a little bit more to experiment with vocally, I'd ask for, have you done such and such on that song yet? Can you send me those so I can hear a bit more of the approach? But it really was a matter of each guy really just looking at the vocals. How can I, do the same melody, sort of? The song cannot lose its integrity. That's the most important part. It was tough for everybody. I think the lion's share of difficulty in terms of reimagining, reinterpreting your part was for Ian, because a lot of, he's a remarkable guitar player, and suddenly he's playing these things that, like Tired World, for example. When it was first suggested to do Tired World, I thought, we can't pull that off in this setting. There's no way. How can we reach that intensity? I heard his the back half of the song with him winding out on acoustic guitar, and I'm like, it's almost more energy than on the electric version. There's this tension, there's this angst about it, and I think if you ask most guitar players, they'll say it's much harder to play those kinds of runs and that kind of like soloing basically on an acoustic guitar as opposed to an electric. But I was like just completely blown away. But that had to be really, really hard for Ian to reinterpret his parts all on acoustic. But like I say, overall it was challenging as hell for everyone. But the finished product, when I finally listened to the whole thing back to back, from beginning to end, mastered, slapped the headphones on, and I was, again, very, very fussy about what we do, what I do, what the guys do. Overall, as a band, we're very particular about the way we sound and the way we come across. And I was extremely pleased with the outcome and the mastering. We're very, very proud of that record. I'm extremely proud of the record. And even though it's not technically new material, it is in a sense, because we've had to reinvent ourselves, and almost more difficult than coming up with something original. because, like I said, you have to keep the integrity of the song, but make it sound fresh. And a lot of fun to make.
No, yeah, I thought that if anything, like, especially with a song like Always There from House of Cards, I felt like song like that, the emotion that you displayed originally on the original track in 2001 was, I felt, even more heartfelt and even more sincere if it wasn't sincere and heartfelt enough the first time
I
around.
agree. Yeah, somehow, because it's suddenly more, it's a lot more personal. It's a lot more under the microscope, and it's basic. It's right there, and it's in a lyric like that really comes across more, I think, like you said, in that kind of setting.
Yeah. So moving forward now, you've hinted at that there will be a swan song of sorts, a swan song album, something like a Worlds Apart 2. Are you already formulating ideas gearing towards what that record could be, or could, as far as the songs that you would like to have on there? No. Okay.
Haven't got a clue. Haven't got a clue. I know they're going to be great. One of them might be this song I've been working on for 10 years. I don't know. No, I just know that. See, before we did Worlds Apart, we didn't know what kind of record we were going to make. We just came up with some songs, and we were in a really good headspace. And that's the key, I think. Not just rushing to do a record because it's time to do a record and contractually you owe a record or something like that. When we're ready to do one and we're all five in the right frame of mind, that's the time to go, you know what? I think it's about time we made that new record, whether it be the last or not. I'm not saying it would be the swan song, but if it is, I want it to be strong anyway, but I would go into that record thinking that it could well be. You want every record to be as strong as possible, but I think in the back of my mind, I think the other guys as well, we're going to have this feeling like, let's not go out with a bang, but you know what I mean? I don't want to fade out into the sunset. I will never do that. I will never accept that. I will not. I think you should always, bands should always stop, if they're going to stop, at the height of their game. There's no reason. There could be a financial reason sometimes behind it, but I think that's a shame. I think there's other ways to compensate for the financial. If you're at the top of your game and it feels right and it's been a while and it's the right time, that's the time to do it. And don't just keep flogging. It's not a matter of flogging a dead horse, but just, going out there and becoming a nostalgia band or that kind of thing. I never want that to happen to us, and I don't think we will allow that to happen. Right now, we are at the top of our game. I'm not hinting that anything final is coming, but that's as long as you keep plowing forward, and if the creative thing is still there and you still feel the vibe, absolutely, by all means, and if you're playing well, and you will be if you're all feeling good with each other and life, and that your shows and your performances are always going to be top notch, because you always bring 1,000% to the stage anyway. Should that start to wane? Yeah, that's the day that I'll tell you what, to go back to the question of when I get asked, do you still get nervous before a show? Yes, I still have these butterflies, and this, especially the size of it's a really big show of that, but even the intimate ones, walking on stage, I never know what's going to happen. So I get this case of nerves. I'm not nervous per se, but this anticipation. If that goes away, and I don't feel that before going on stage, then it's turned into a job. It means I'm just going through the motions. I don't care where I am. I'm just going to go up and sing the songs that are in the set list. I will say hello once in a while. I may or may not interact with the audience, but it doesn't matter to me anymore. Or I'd be nervous. And if I'm not nervous and I'm just going out there and doing that, no, I don't think that's fair to me. I don't think it's fair to the audience. I don't think it's fair to anybody. If you're just going through the motions and it becomes a cash cow, I never want that to happen.
Yeah, and I think
and there's ways to prevent that. You can see it coming, and just go, you know what? I think we're almost. Let's just take a pause here, because we're. Why you stop now? You're at the top of your game. That's why. I want. If that's going to happen, I want it to be a really, really strong memory in people's minds. Not, oh, they used to be great. Oh, isn't that cool? I remember when they used to play this song. Yeah, he used to do this. I don't want that. We don't deserve that, and the audience doesn't deserve that kind of memory. I don't think.
I think your fans, including myself, see right through that. They feel and they believe that
of course
you're always giving 1,000% into everything and anything that you do.
And so, because of that, they will feel the difference and they'll notice it. And I don't want that to happen. I think that would be sad.
I always said I think you should stop, know when to leave the party. And I think like a band such as Rush, who didn't even call out a farewell tour, but gave a great final, tour and left the building with their
Oh yeah.
integrity intact.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Says a lot about
100%.
those guys.
100%. 100%. They did
Yeah.
it right.
So, not to get too into this, because I know it's still a long ways away, but would you be open to, as far as like a producer that maybe you haven't worked with, or maybe someone from the past that you hadn't worked with in a while, someone such as a Steven Taylor who helped mix and engineer Worlds Apart and Heads or Tails, who's still active?
That's an interesting thought. That could be almost like a co-produced thing.
Yeah.
You know what? I haven't really thought down the road about who may or may not be involved with the new record, but I certainly wouldn't dismiss the idea. I think it might be a good idea to involve someone else at this point, just to, someone that has a good track record. They don't necessarily have to have been doing prog or necessarily been doing any particular genre. They're just, if I like the kinds of records that they have worked on and the sound of the kind of records the person's worked on, maybe you never know. I mean, it's not something where we sit and go, I think for the next one we really should have a producer again. Someone just tells us what to do or has ideas, and or go, no, we don't need a producer anymore because we know exactly what to do. Yeah, it's something to be said for after 4.5 decades of doing things our way, and for the most part, it might be good to have someone like not a new Rupert Hine, but what happened with Rupert when he came in, and they can notice things slightly differently that we either got not complacent with, but we got really used to doing things a certain way. And I don't think we're so inflexible that we wouldn't be open to fresh ideas, unless we thought they were like, that's not for us. Nice idea, but not for us. I certainly wouldn't be object to at least hearing, sitting down with someone and going, what would you bring to, what do you get from do you like the band? How much do you like the band? How much would you like it to sound a bit more like this or this? Do you have any ideas? Yeah, I'd be open to at least have the discussions.
And well, I'm a huge fan of your solo record, Clear. Will there be a follow-up to that at some point? Because
100%.
I love that record to this day.
100%. I mean, like I was kind of hinting at it earlier. This one song that I'm working on that I'm having conflict with offer it for Saga or keep it to myself. It would be very much at home on either the new Saga or Clear 2, and anything that I'm writing personally right now is in the direction of it's going to be a follow-up to Clear, because my next one will be, I'd love to think that it would be a trilogy. It's like Clear happened before the crash and the alcohol. The final track, Clear, is about finally getting the demon off my back. The follow-up should be to me, now living in the real world again, as it were. It's not easy. At first, it's not easy. There's, after 20 years, it's a lot easier to take. But it's a battle, and you have to learn how to. You have new parameters. You have a whole different way of looking at life suddenly, and you've got to be a lot more responsible. So it's tricky and it's tough. That's like the aftermath, and then the third would be dealing with the future and how you're going to move forward now that you're in this new state of mind. So that's the way I'm kind of looking at it. But yeah, at least part 2. I don't know, maybe when I come up with the lyrics, I hope we just need part 2. I'm not sure, but that's the idea right now. Anything I write that I don't think is going to be for Saga specific, I'm shelving for working on Clear. I like to have like 15 or 20 songs to choose from.
Wonderful news. And just wrapping up here, is there a particular album that you've worked on, that you've been a part of in your career, that you feel your fans deserve to maybe reassess or listen to again? Something, a highlight for you outside of Behavior, of course, that for you maybe deserves a reassessment.
Saga record?
Yeah, it could be a Saga record. Absolutely.
I think Generation 13 needs a closer listen by a lot of people. Concept records scare people out, just the idea of it being a concept record. There's a lot of great standalone songs on that album. There's 2 or 3 that we play live. Learning Tree we do live, great song live. The Cross we've done many times live. That's one that I think people would it's worth another listen for those who kind of listen to it. It's a conceptual thing. try listening to it with a different frame of mind and just hear it with fresh ears. It might make a difference, especially with the remasters, which sound phenomenal. Um, yeah, I think of all of them. It's worth it. I wouldn't dive too far back like the first three albums. It's you know, as proud of it as I am of the first three albums, and it was the beginning of the whole thing. I listened to it sonically and I'm like, it's not quite indicative of where we ended up, but for fun, it's you know. In terms of yeah, I would say Generation 13 of all of them.
The Victim is another great one, I think, on that one. That's very
Yes,
tuneful. I think that could
yes,
have been a single even. I
I
think it's
agree.
got a
I
great
agree.
melody.
I agree. And I mean, this is a beautiful orchestral piece at the end. I'll Never Be Like You, which is basically just vocal and orchestra, which I'm very, very proud of. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of music. But I mean, ultimately, I'd like to see Generation 13 turned into a stage production, like a multimedia stage production with a cast of characters and you know, coming to life and that kind of thing. I just think it deserves that. I think if seen in that setting, people will really get it and understand it more and go, oh, I see, oh, cool. But I think it needs that visual and that kind of presentation. And of course, with an orchestra, absolutely no question about it.
Yeah, it's an incredibly symphonic listen. It's something that it's probably the first Saga album that I checked out that kind of stopped me in my tracks. I said, this is going to be a much deeper listen than your usual Saga affair. But
Yeah,
I loved it nonetheless, and it takes a couple listens or so,
yes, it
but
does.
once it clicks,
Yeah.
you're stuck with it for life, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, you have to. It's a state of mind and a mood you have to be in to listen to it. You know, back to back or from front to back. But yeah, I think it's worth a listen for those who kind of not just kind of skipped by it and went, oh, that's nice. When you listen, you like drop the needle in 3 or 4 places and go, oh, okay, I don't like concept records. Get that out of your head and just listen to it as an album.
Yeah, and you're going to be going on tour tomorrow, I believe, correct? You're
Flying
heading
out
over.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
flying over tomorrow to Germany again. It's the Night to Remember tour part 2. We're doing it in 3 sections. The third section being starting in October, but leaving tomorrow for exactly 18 days. I think we're doing 11 shows.
I hope to catch you whenever you do tour, if you end up touring Puerto Rico again, because that's probably the only opportunity I would have to really see the band, which I have yet to see, but that'll be a night to remember for me. So I can't wait.
It's a good place to see the band for sure.
Yeah. And again, for those that don't know, like the other huge portion of your fan base is derived from Puerto Rico.
It was crazy. It was crazy in the beginning. You know, you release an album and you cross your fingers and you hope people are going to like it, and you don't know where you're going to take off if you do. And Germany and Puerto Rico, polar opposites culturally, musically. I can't explain that. The only thing I can say is perhaps the orchestral and epic side of the band appeal to the classical like genes in Europe and what they've been exposed to for hundreds of years, and the rhythmic side of the band appealing to the sort of Latin community and the sort of salsa and that kind of thing. Maybe that blend explains why the Germans and the Puerto Ricans enjoyed this music at the same time. I mean, one of the biggest songs in Puerto Rico was The Perfectionist, which is a waltz, and it's just an out and out 3/4 waltz. I'm like, really? You know. But on the other hand, Humble Stance is huge there, and it's got that, you know, that bopping kind of sound.
And the band will be releasing the reissue series from Era Music, which again sounds phenomenal. I mean, Beginner's Guide never sounded any better, and Wildest Dreams sounds fantastic as well, more than ever. So I love these reissues. I think that they're
the last 2 have just, or the most recent 2 that have come out, I believe, are Trust and House of Cards. So
okay, great. I'm looking forward to getting 10,000 Days. That one's been out of print for a while, so I would love to what that sounds like. And lastly, Michael, if one last question for you, I promise. How do you preserve your voice? I mean, I think it's on everybody's frame of mind. Every time you put out a new record, every time you tour, it seems to me like your voice has remained intact. It always sounds better than ever before. How and why? What is the magic here?
You know what? Each time I get asked that question, it's like, sorry to disappoint you, because everyone's always waiting for some kind of answer, concrete answer. Truth of the matter, A, I'm really lucky. B, I learned how to sing properly when I was young, I guess. I thank God I'm blessed with it. I know that in the meantime, I do not take it for granted. I have nothing that I do short of trying to eat properly, exercise when I can, nothing, just try and stay as fit as possible, as clean a lifestyle as humanly possible. I stopped drinking 20 years ago. That might have something to do with it, the physicality of the throat. I don't warm up before a show. I never have. I don't do scales. I don't drink warm tea with honey in it. I have no regimen. We show up at sound check. Sometimes we do a 5-minute sound check and then we'll have supper, and then it's like, get your stage clothes on. About 10 minutes before, I might cough and then and then walk on stage. I wish I had a more glamorous, secretive, revealing answer, but I don't. I'm just extremely lucky, and I hope it lasts for a lot longer.
I heard all these stories about singers screaming into pillows and doing all these, and then you just go out there. I heard Ronnie James Dio would do the same thing. Apparently, he would just go out there and just belt it out.
Start singing. I mean, the funniest thing, just real quick, the funny story having to do with warming up and singers. I can't remember the name of the band. We were on tour in the States. This is in the 80s. We were touring Worlds Apart, I believe. We were just doing one tour after another. We do Billy Squire and Jethro Tull, Pat Benatar, and we just jumped from tour to tour. We found ourselves in an arena, I want to say North Carolina, someplace like that. Typical, the dressing rooms are the locker rooms, basically, and there was a 3-act bill, someone before us, then ourselves, and then whoever the main act was. And in the room next to us, the locker room next to us, the dressing room next to us, was the first support. And they were getting ready to go on. The singer started doing his scales, and someone said, "Hey, Michael, check it out." I was like, and I listened. He's doing all the la 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 la, and he's making all these sounds and all this. And I thought to myself, "Whoa, this guy's serious. I got to check him out." He does this. He works out, like 10, 15 minutes at this really solid vocal workout. They go on stage, and I kind of followed behind because I stood at the side of the stage to check it out. First song started, and he walked up to the microphone and just started screaming like, I thought, why did you warm up? What was the point of all that? But I guess to each his own. Maybe he needs that to be able to deliver that kind of raspy voice. I don't know. Whatever it was, it seemed to work for him, but it just seems so odd to me.
Go figure, right?
These operatic warm-ups. But whatever. So yeah, I'm lucky. I got my fingers crossed that I've still got some years left in me. So, Michael,
one last thing. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you very much.
It was your birthday yesterday.
It was, yeah. Very low key and chill, and exactly what I needed before going into that crazy world of touring again.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to the future, as always, looking forward to what's next in the world of Saga, which is always a safe place to be in. I think it always feels like almost like a home away from home. I feel like I can actually breathe a lot better, feel a lot stronger listening to your music, a lot more motivated. And I think that's what we need nowadays. And so I really appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time.
I'm glad we can deliver that. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to do this too. I mean, you don't have to do this. I know you don't have to, and it means the world to me nonetheless. And I really appreciate you taking all this time to go through your career. Thank you.
My pleasure, sir. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think we need more platforms, more talk platforms for music. And I'm grassroots here. I think we need filters so people know, hey, this guy's got good taste, or this person has good taste. We should check out whatever they're into. So grassroots here, it's only about 1.5 years now with Sonic Dorns, but with you, again, credibility here, you are someone incredibly credible.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. I mean, there's interviews and then there's conversations. And conversations, I find, or interviews that feel more like conversations, tend to be more revealing in terms of opinions. And you see, I sometimes don't know how I feel about things until I start talking about them, like truly, because I've never either been asked that question or never been asked that kind of thing from that direction. So I find it's a much more constructive and interesting interview when it feels more like a conversation, like today with yourself. And anytime that happens, I think it's better listening and more interesting for the listeners.
Again, thank you so much. You truly are a humble spirit and honestly just the best. So thank you again for doing this, and
My pleasure.
hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
Just let me know. I'll be right here.
All right, Mr. Michael Sadler here of Saga. Got to check them out. They're one of the greatest, one of the most underappreciated super groups, in my opinion, of all time. So all the best to you. And until next time, Michael.
Thank you, sir.